Introduction to a Crossroads. Mira sat by the window of her small apartment, staring at the city lights flickering in the distance. The streets below buzzed with life, people rushing home, laughter spilling from a nearby cafe, taxis honking impatiently. It was a world constantly moving forward, yet she felt completely stuck. At 27, Mira had everything she was told she should want: a stable corporate job, a decent paycheck, and a life that looked good on the outside. But inside, she felt hollow. Every morning, she woke up dreading the day ahead, the endless cycle of emails, deadlines, and meetings that left her drained. It wasn't that she was bad at her job. In fact, she was considered one of the best in her department. But the work itself felt meaningless. It didn't ignite the fire within her. Her true passion had always been writing. As a child, she would fill notebooks with stories of adventure, love, and mystery. Words flowed effortlessly when she wrote, and it made her feel alive. Yet somewhere along the way, she had been told that writing was just a hobby, not a career. "It's not practical," her parents had warned. "You need stability in life." So she had set her dreams aside and followed the practical path laid out for her. But lately, the feeling of dissatisfaction had become unbearable. She found herself daydreaming in the middle of work meetings, picturing a different life, one where she wasn't bound by the rigid expectations of corporate success, a life where she could wake up excited to create something meaningful. Then, one evening, an email changed everything. It was from a renowned online magazine. She had submitted a short story months ago on a whim, never expecting a response. But there it was, a letter from the editor, praising her work and offering her a freelance opportunity. It wasn't a full-time job, and the pay was far less than what she earned now, but it was a chance. A door opening to the life she had once dreamed of. Mira's heart pounded as she read the email over and over again. A part of her wanted to accept immediately, but another part hesitated. Leaving her stable job to pursue writing full-time felt reckless, even foolish. What if she failed? What if she disappointed her family? For days, she wrestled with the decision, torn between logic and passion, fear and hope. But deep down, she knew this was her crossroads. She could either continue down the safe, predictable path, or she could take a risk and follow her heart. As she stood by the window that night, staring at the lights of the city, she realized something. Happiness wasn't in playing it safe. It was in taking chances, in chasing what truly made her soul come alive. With a deep breath, she turned back to her laptop, fingers trembling as she typed out her response to the magazine. "I would love to accept this opportunity." And just like that, her life began to change. The dream that won't fade. Mira had always known that writing was her true calling. Long before she became a corporate employee, she had spent countless nights filling journals with stories, characters, and worlds only she could see. It was never just a hobby. It was her escape, her passion, the one thing that made her feel truly alive. But somewhere along the way, life had forced her to tuck that dream away. Growing up, her parents had been firm believers in stability. "Creative careers are too risky," they would remind her whenever she mentioned wanting to be a writer. "You need something secure, something real." Their words had stuck with her, and when the time came to choose a career, she had followed their advice. She studied business, landed a well-paying job, and settled into the life they had always envisioned for her. Yet, the dream refused to die. Even after a long, exhausting day at work, Mira would find herself returning to her writing. She would stay up late, typing stories that no one would ever read, pouring her heart onto the page in secret. Some nights, she would stare at her reflection in the mirror and whisper to herself, "What if? What if she had pursued writing from the start? What if she could turn her passion into something real? What if she dared to dream beyond the expectations that had been placed upon her?" But the doubts always crept in. She had responsibilities, bills to pay, a family to make proud. People around her seemed content with their practical lives. Friends were climbing the corporate ladder, buying homes, starting families. Compared to them, Mira felt like she was standing still, caught between duty and desire. The worst part? No one truly understood. Whenever she tried to bring up the idea of writing full-time, her parents would dismiss it as a phase. "You're just bored," her mother would say. "Once you get a promotion, you'll feel better." Even her closest friends, though supportive in their own way, would remind her how competitive the publishing world was. "It's a great dream," they'd say, "but it's not practical." So Mira kept it to herself. She wrote in secret, waking up an hour early to scribble notes before work, spending weekends lost in unfinished manuscripts. She read stories of authors who had struggled for years before making it, clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, she could do it too. But hope alone wasn't enough. No matter how much she nurtured her dream in the quiet corners of her life, reality always pulled her back. She was stuck in a loop, too afraid to let go of stability, yet unable to ignore the pull of something greater. And then, one day, she realized something. The dream wasn't fading. It was growing louder, stronger, more insistent. It wasn't going to let her go. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't want it to. A bold decision. Mira sat at her desk, staring at the resignation email on her screen. Her fingers hovered over the send button, her heart pounding. For years, she had lived a life that wasn't truly hers, a life shaped by expectations, responsibilities, and fear. But now she had a choice. A terrifying, exhilarating choice. The email from the magazine had changed everything. A publication she had admired for years had recognized her talent and offered her a freelance opportunity. It wasn't a full-time job, and the pay was uncertain, but it was real. It was proof that her dream wasn't just a fantasy, it was possible. Still, taking the leap meant stepping into the unknown. Quitting her stable job felt reckless. Her parents would be disappointed. Her friends would think she was being impulsive. She had savings, but how long would they last? What if she failed? For days she debated, playing out different scenarios in her head. She made lists, weighing the pros and cons, trying to convince herself that staying in her corporate job was the smarter choice. But deep down, she already knew the truth. She couldn't keep living a life that drained her. She couldn't silence the voice inside her any longer. If she didn't take this chance now, when would she? One evening, as she walked home from work, she passed by a bookstore. She stopped in front of the window, staring at the rows of books, the names of authors who had once been dreamers just like her. A thought struck her with force. One day, I want my name on one of those books. That was it. That was her answer. The fear didn't disappear, but something stronger took its place: determination. That night, she sat at her desk, took a deep breath, and clicked send. Her resignation letter was out in the world. There was no turning back. As the email disappeared from her screen, a wave of panic hit her. What had she just done? Had she made the biggest mistake of her life? Then, slowly, the panic faded, replaced by something unexpected: relief. For the first time in years, she felt free. She didn't have a clear plan. She didn't know exactly what the future held. But she had something far more important. She had faith in herself. The next morning, she woke up not with dread, but with excitement. Her new life had begun, and no matter what happened next, she knew one thing for sure. She had finally chosen herself. Early struggles and doubts. Mira had expected challenges when she left her corporate job, but nothing could have prepared her for the harsh reality of chasing her dream. At first, there was excitement. She felt free, waking up every morning with a sense of purpose. She set up a writing schedule, pitched articles to magazines, and poured her soul into her stories. She told herself that as long as she worked hard, things would fall into place. But life didn't work that way. Within weeks, her savings started dwindling. The freelance gigs she had counted on weren't enough to cover rent and expenses. Some magazines didn't respond to her pitches, and others rejected her work outright. The fear of failure crept in like an unwelcome shadow. Self-doubt became her constant companion. What if I'm not good enough? What if I made a mistake? What if everyone was right, and I should have stayed in my job? Her parents weren't shy about their disapproval. "It's not too late to go back," her mother reminded her during every phone call. You had a stable job. Why throw that away for something so uncertain? Even her friends, though well-meaning, voiced their concerns. Maybe you should do this part-time instead of making it your whole life, one of them suggested. Mira knew they meant well, but every comment felt like a stab to her confidence. She started questioning herself more and more. One particularly rough week, she stared at her laptop screen, unable to write a single word. Her bank account was dangerously low, and she was beginning to wonder if she should give up and apply for a new job. Maybe her dream had been unrealistic all along. Then, one evening, she received an email from a small online magazine. One of her essays had been accepted for publication. The payment was small, but it was something. More than that, it was proof that her work had value. She clung to that tiny victory. It wasn't an overnight success, and there were still more rejections than acceptances. But little by little, she started building momentum. She learned to budget more carefully, to keep pushing, even when doubt threatened to pull her under. The journey was far from easy, but she reminded herself why she had started. She wasn't chasing comfort, she was chasing fulfillment. And as long as she held on to that, she knew she couldn't give up. Unexpected friendships. Mira had always thought of writing as a solitary pursuit, just her thoughts, and the endless blinking cursor on her laptop. But as she struggled to find her footing in this new life, she realized she couldn't do it alone. One afternoon, while working in a local cafe, she overheard a conversation at the next table. A group of writers were discussing their latest projects, sharing struggles and small victories. Mira hesitated, debating whether to introduce herself. What if they didn't take her seriously? Summoning her courage, she leaned over. Sorry to interrupt, but are you all writers? A woman with curly hair and bright eyes grinned. Guilty. You too? And just like that, Mira found herself welcomed into a world she never knew she needed. The group met every week, poets, journalists, novelists, and freelancers, all at different stages of their careers. Some were experienced, others were just starting out, but they all understood the highs and lows of the creative journey. Through them, Mira found guidance. They shared tips on pitching articles, finding steady freelance work, and overcoming rejection. She met Daniel, a seasoned writer who became her mentor, teaching her the business side of writing. Talent is only part of it, he told her. You have to treat this like a career, not a gamble. Then there was Layla, a novelist working on her first book, who became Mira's closest friend. On days when self-doubt consumed her, Layla would remind her why she started. You're not alone in this, she would say. Every writer feels like a fraud sometimes. Just keep going. Mira also discovered the power of community in unexpected ways. One night, after sharing her financial struggles, a fellow writer recommended a steady freelance gig at an independent magazine. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave her stability and confidence. With these new friendships, something shifted in Mira. She no longer felt like an outsider chasing an impossible dream. She was part of something bigger, a network of people who understood, who encouraged her to grow, and who refused to let her give up. For the first time, she truly believed she could make this work. And she wasn't doing it alone. Moments of triumph and setbacks. Mira's journey as a writer was anything but smooth. For every small victory, there seemed to be an equally crushing setback waiting around the corner. Her first real triumph came when one of her articles went viral. It was a deeply personal essay about following one's passion despite fear, something she had written straight from the heart. She woke up to hundreds of messages, people thanking her for putting their feelings into words, encouraging her to write more. For the first time, she felt like she was making an impact. Buoyed by the success, she sent out more pitches, hoping to build on her momentum. But the rejections came swiftly. Some editors didn't respond at all. Others sent back curt emails. Not the right fit. Not what we're looking for. Try again next time. She tried not to let it get to her, but doubt crept back in. Had her viral article been a fluke? What if she wasn't as good as she thought? Then just when she was considering taking a break, she received an offer from a well-known publication. They wanted to feature her work. It was the biggest opportunity she had ever gotten, and for a moment, everything felt like it was finally falling into place. But the excitement was short-lived. Days before the article was set to be published, the editor informed her they had decided to go in a different direction. They wouldn't be using her piece after all. The disappointment hit her harder than she expected. She had told her friends, even her parents, about the opportunity. Now, she had to face them with nothing to show for it. For days, she couldn't bring herself to write. What was the point? The setbacks felt relentless, as if the universe was testing her, asking if she truly had the strength to keep going. Then, one evening, she received a message from Layla. "I know it feels like a loss, but this is part of the process. Rejections, delays, setbacks, they don't mean you're failing. They mean you're in the game. Keep going." Mira reread the message several times. Maybe she had been looking at it all wrong. Every rejection, every failure wasn't proof that she wasn't good enough. It was proof that she was trying, that she was putting herself out there. With renewed determination, she picked up her laptop and started writing again. The road ahead was still uncertain, but she had learned something valuable. Success wasn't about never failing. It was about refusing to let failure stop her. A defining challenge. Mira had faced struggles before, but nothing like this. After months of slowly building her freelance career, she had finally gained some stability. She had a few steady clients, her writing was getting recognized, and for the first time, she wasn't constantly worried about money. Then, everything came crashing down. One of her biggest clients, a magazine that provided nearly half of her income, suddenly shut down. An editor she worked with left another publication, and her pitches stopped getting accepted. At the same time, a major personal expense drained her savings, leaving her financially vulnerable. Within weeks, she was struggling to pay rent. The stability she had worked so hard for disappeared overnight, and the fear she had buried deep inside resurfaced stronger than ever. Had she made a mistake leaving her corporate job? The thought haunted her. She had been so sure that following her passion was the right path, but now all she felt was uncertainty. She started browsing job listings late at night, wondering if she should go back to a real job. Her parents, who had always been skeptical about her decision, gently suggested she reconsider. "There's no shame in going back," her father said. "Maybe writing can still be a hobby, something you do on the side." For the first time in a long time, she wondered if they were right. Maybe she had been naive to think she could build a career out of writing. Maybe it was time to accept reality. But then, something unexpected happened. One evening, she received an email from a stranger. A reader who had come across one of her essays wrote to tell her how much it had meant to them. "Your words made me feel seen," the email read. "Please keep writing." It was a simple message, but it struck Mira deeply. She thought about everything she had been through, the risks, the sacrifices, the small victories. She remembered why she had started in the first place. Writing wasn't just something she wanted to do. It was who she was. Yes, she was struggling. Yes, the path was hard. But giving up now would mean throwing away everything she had worked for. So, instead of retreating, she made a decision. She reached out to new publications, diversified her income sources, and even started a personal blog to connect directly with readers. She took on part-time work to stay afloat, but she refused to abandon her dream. The defining challenge had nearly broken her, but in facing it, she realized something important. Her dream was worth fighting for, and she wasn't giving up. The turning point. Mira had been fighting to keep her dream alive, but exhaustion was creeping in. The struggles of freelancing, the constant rejections, and the weight of financial instability were becoming overwhelming. She had refused to give up, but she was starting to wonder how much longer she could keep going. Then one day, everything changed. She was sitting in a cafe, scrolling through job postings, half tempted to apply for a corporate position, when she received an unexpected email. Subject: "Loved your work. Let's talk." It was from the editor-in-chief of a well-known online platform. They had come across one of her personal essays and were deeply moved by it. "Your voice is fresh, raw, and powerful," the email read. "We'd love to feature more of your work. Are you open to a long-term collaboration?" Mira's heart pounded. This wasn't just another freelance gig. It was an opportunity for steady work with a publication she admired. a chance to finally have the stability she had been chasing while staying true to her dream. But it wasn't just the offer that made this a turning point. It was the realization that came with it. For months, she had been questioning whether she was good enough, whether this path was sustainable. But here was proof. Someone had noticed her work. Someone did believe in her talent. And if they did, maybe it was time she fully believed in herself too. Instead of hesitating, Mira responded immediately, "I'd love to discuss this opportunity." That single moment shifted everything. The collaboration turned into a steady writing position, giving her financial security and the confidence to keep growing. She no longer felt like she was barely surviving. She was thriving. And for the first time, she knew, without a doubt, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Success and fulfillment. Years ago, Mira had sat at her office desk, trapped in a job that drained her soul, wondering if she would ever feel truly alive. Now, as she watched her name appear on the byline of a major publication, she smiled. She had made it. It hadn't been easy. The road had been filled with doubts, setbacks, and moments where she nearly gave up. But she had kept going. And now, all those struggles felt like distant echoes compared to the life she had built. She was no longer just a writer struggling to get by. She was a recognized voice in her field. Her work was being published regularly, and she had built a loyal audience who resonated with her words. She had even completed the first draft of her book, something she once thought was impossible. But success wasn't just about the recognition. It was about waking up every morning excited to create. It was about knowing that her work had meaning, that her words had the power to inspire others. It was about proving to herself that she had been right all along. Following her heart was worth it. One evening, as she sat at her desk with a cup of tea, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought of the girl she had been, the one who was too afraid to take risks, too scared of disappointing others. If she could go back and say one thing to that version of herself, it would be this: trust yourself. The road will be hard, but it will lead you exactly where you're meant to be. With a deep breath, Mira opened her laptop and began typing again. Because this wasn't the end of her journey. It was just the beginning. Inspiring others. Mira had once been the girl sitting at her desk, afraid to take a leap. Now, she was the woman others looked to for inspiration. Her journey, once filled with uncertainty, self-doubt, and struggle, had become a testament to the power of courage and persistence. People who had followed her writing reached out to share how her story had changed them. Your words gave me the push I needed to chase my own dream. I was stuck in a job I hated, but after reading about your journey, I finally took the risk. Thank you for showing me it's never too late to follow your heart. Mira hadn't set out to inspire anyone. She had simply followed her truth. But in doing so, she had given others permission to do the same. One day, she was invited to speak at a creative conference. Standing in front of an audience filled with aspiring writers, dreamers, and people searching for their own path, she took a deep breath and shared her story. She spoke about the fear, the failures, the moments of doubt, but more importantly, she spoke about the joy of finally living a life that felt like hers. As she looked out at the crowd, she realized something profound. The impact of one courageous decision doesn't stop with just one person. It creates a ripple effect, touching lives in ways we may never fully understand. Mira had once been inspired by the stories of others. Now she was the one lighting the way, and in that moment, she knew this was success, not just for herself, but for everyone who dared to believe that following their heart could change everything.